We are now beyond the first week of patch 10.8, and you guys know exactly what that means. We have a sneak peek now of patch 10.9, so make sure you smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. As usual, major changes are gonna come in first, and the first big change we're gonna look at is nerfs to the monkey man Wukong, because Wukong has been absolutely terrorizing every single elo for a long time now. It might seem like Riot only hit him in 3 different ways, and well, I say only as if that's not a lot, but they actually hit him in 4. First, Riot toned down his base armor by 3 in order to make him take more damage in trades and poke early on. This will make a big difference, as any point of armor that you can get when you have very little is extremely important. 1 point of armor can mean several points of damage reduction. They didn't just take a look at his tankiness though, they also took a look at his damage. They nerfed his Q damage by 10 at all ranks, and beyond that decided to tone down his damage even more by nerfing the amount of damage that his clone can do by 5%. Those are just the 3 straightforward nerfs. However, the clone damage nerf also compounds with the Q nerf, leading to your clone damage, especially early on, being pretty underwhelming. These changes also heavily impact Wukong in the jungle, as armor is extremely important there for damage reduction, and every bit of damage speeds up your clear, and every second that you can get in your clear is crucial. Maybe now Wukong's ban rate will go down slightly from the absurd 30% that it was. But while we're on the topic of speaking about the jungle, let's talk about the jungler that got buffed this patch. Kang got some really significant changes on this patch. His Q cooldown went down by 1 second at all ranks, and his W slow went up to 90%. Sure, the slow decays, but you gotta remember, that's a rank 1 ability. That is a very significant movement speed slow that can absolutely cripple some champions. Oh, and of course, his most fundamental clearing tool, his Q, going down in cooldown means he's gonna clear even faster than he did in the past. But with all of that past them, Riot still decided that they weren't giving Kane quite enough love and decided to also make the Q bonus damage apply to minions and not just monsters. This means that he can wave clear actually pretty well and shove waves after he ganks to pressure opponents and make them lose even more resources. By the way, all my jungler friends out there, if you ever get pinged when you're shoving the wave after killing the enemy laner, you could just go ahead and ping them right back because you are the correct one in this scenario. Do not give up and succumb to your laner's flame. Before we leave the jungle, we're going to cover the last major change to any jungler on this patch preview. Chrono got a nerf specifically targeted at his ultimate, and the cooldown on his ultimate went up by 20 seconds at all ranks. This is important because Chrono relies on his ultimate to heal back initial burst in a fight, and from there heal even more over time as he continues to tank his opponents and try and outfight them. Without having his ultimate up in order to do that, he can't really go toe-to-toe with most other tanks in the game. Because of that, having a longer window to abuse him while it's on cooldown is really big. But you want to know what else is big? The Bard changes, because this man got absolutely destroyed. A lot like the Wukong nerfs, Riot is going for a 3-hit combo here, and thankfully they're not sneaking up a 4th one behind his back. They're touching Bard's W movement speed, toning it down by 20% down to 30%. From there, they're also nerfing the W cooldown, so you have to wait even longer to get more healing out in the lane in place for your laner in case they happen to take damage, or if you happen to take damage, you won't have as much in reserve until more time has passed. And beyond all of that, the cooldown also means that in the middle of a fight, you will have less healing for your allies, period. If nothing else, we definitely know that a lot of Bard mains are really sad right now with these nerfs. But just when they were so sad, crawling around in pain from being kicked in the stomach, Riot once again goes for the coup de grace killing blow. They also nerfed Bard's E cooldown by 4 seconds early and 2 seconds later. As if everything else wasn't already enough, this change single-handedly destroys Bard's ability to get away from engaging style supports. By the way, if you thought I wasn't gonna find a way to sneak coup de grace into another video, you were wrong, my friends. But as we leave Bard executed by the guillotine and move on to other changes, let's talk about Nami. For a while, Nami rode pretty well with Bard there at the top of the support list, but with these changes, she's definitely going another peg downwards, as if she hadn't already taken another step down already. While she only gets some small stat changes, with like 14 health being lost and about 12 mana being lost, and there's some decimal rounding in there because of course Riot is obsessed with clean numbers, and I mean, come on, who wants 0.24 mana anyway, really? But beyond those minuscule changes, there's also a nerf to her passive, and this one is very significant. Nami's passive movement speed buff goes from 60 down to 45 base. This is actually a very significant nerf, as usually what would happen is Nami would give an ally so much base movement speed that combined with her E-slow, they can easily chase down and kite somebody. When you lose 15 movement speed, and generally this buff is being applied to champions who are already the slowest in league, that's a big deal. This also really hurts her initiation potential, as when you hit somebody with your R, if it's an ally, they get double the movement speed bonus. So the double now goes from 120 down to 90, and if 15 movement speed wasn't already convincing, 30 is a huge jump. These Nami and Bard nerfs are definitely definitely going to affect the upper end of the support pool this upcoming patch. We have one last major change on this patch, and those go out to Gnar. As Gnar, whenever you throw out your Q, whether you're in mini or mega form, you can always interact with the ability, whether it be catching your boomerang or picking up the rock to reduce the cooldown. Riot decided to target this specifically and make the boulder pickup in mega form have a better cooldown refund. On its own, this change might not make too much sense as you don't pick up the boulder that often, at least when you're in lane. Sometimes it can be very risky to do so. However, this also makes sense when compounded with the second change to Gnar. Riot also buffed his Mega Form's E damage by 30 at all ranks. This sort of allows Gnar more damage in an all-in where he hits somebody with a Q, then jumps on top of them while also picking up the Q and then hits them with it again. That sort of combo is going to do more damage and it'll come up faster so that you can do it even earlier. Having these sorts of insights into your champion's combos and potential and what their changes mean is pretty important, and Gnar's here are relatively obvious. But with everything that is obvious, a lot of things really like to hide in the shadows. If they didn't, then nobody would ever be iron, or bronze, or silver, or any of the low ranks for that matter. In order to understand the information, secrets, and strategies that you need to improve and win in your games, you guys need to go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons and tons of guides, all done by challenger level players that can help illuminate all the dark areas and help you understand everything that you need to know to win. Beyond that win today though, we have so many guides that you'll have plenty of stuff to learn in the future so that you can learn and improve over time and keep winning. Trust us, there's a lot of stuff to learn and we have something for you on every step of the way. Whether it be how to learn basic macro, basic micro on a given champion, or learn about hidden tips and secrets on wave management, just about anything and everything is up there for you guys. Now that you're well on your way to understanding every single aspect of League of Legends, let's talk about the minor changes. First up, let's cover the Sanguine Blade buff. The recipe cost went down by 100, which is important. 100 gold is essentially a full wave if you happen to miss one or maybe even two minions if it's a cannon wave. Because of that, you'll be able to save some time and maybe even stop yourself from having a really bad recall. Riot did slip one more thing in there though. They also buffed the AD of Sanguine Blade by 5, and this might not seem like a lot, but remember, the item gives you a ridiculous amount of attack speed when you're by yourself against one other enemy champion. That attack speed means that those 5 extra AD that you get mean even more as you get to auto attack people over time way more than you could before. And even beyond that, if you have low cooldown abilities or any ability that benefits from AD at all, you'll be able to get even more damage off with it. We lead with the changes to Sanguine Blade because the second thing we're going to cover are the buffs to Quinn. They are buffing Quinn's Q so that her nearsighted duration lasts 1.75 seconds instead of 1.5. Quinn didn't get a more substantial buff because the buff to Sanguine Blade also affects her. If this didn't happen, then maybe she could have had an even bigger buff, but the 0.25 seconds of blind really does make a big difference, especially against melee champions who really need the vision to be able to jump on top of you. Not to mention that this will make aiming some skill shots basically impossible as you won't have vision in time before Quinn is able to pretty much kill you. Beyond Sanguine Blade and the changes to Quinn, there are some more substantial minor changes. We can kind of look at those two together and assume that they're kind of big. But moving on from that, Lissandra gets a change to her Q. The cooldown early goes down by 2 seconds, and this is actually a pretty big deal. However, it does come with its own problems. You see, early on, Lissandra doesn't have the low cooldown needed to be able to manage the wave all that well and poke against her enemy. However, at the same time, this does have a drawback. If you have a lower cooldown ability that you can start spamming out that you need to do damage against the wave and your enemy, then you will eventually run out of mana way faster than you did before. To give you some numbers to really show you just how big of a deal this is, within a minute, you used to be able to use your Q 6 times. Now you can do it almost 8. Within 2 minutes, that's 16 versus 12 from before, and think about just how short 2 minutes actually is in a game. While we're at it, let's stop pretending as if you only have your Q ability. There are other mana costs that you have in your kit too. Hopefully now it becomes a little bit more obvious as to why this could be a problem, even though it looks like a pretty nice buff. This will definitely help Lissandra after she gets her first back, ideally with something like a lost chapter or something for mana, but before then, in the very early game, it's not going to make too big of a difference. Speaking of changes that aren't going to make too big of a difference, let's talk about the Fiddlesticks buff that they're rolling out. They're changing his E damage so that it does 20 more damage at rank 5. In the very early lane and levels, before you start getting ranks in your E, this isn't going to mean any differences in your kit. However, as you start to get levels in it, you'll notice the damage start to spike up over time. 5 damage, 10 damage, 15, or even 20 every time you cast the ability will add up quickly considering that it has such a low cooldown. But at the end of the day, is this really what a Fiddlestick support needs to be able to take over the game or perform better? I don't think it's going to make that much of a splash in the overall support pool. He still doesn't do enough poke damage for it to actually stick against people who can heal on low cooldown like Soraka or maybe even Nami or Bard, but I mean hey, some of them did just get the axe on this patch. But this also doesn't help him against all the supports who can engage on him or hook him out of lane and really just make Fiddlesticks have an absolutely miserable time. Now let's talk about a case that is the exact opposite of the Fiddlestick scenario. There's a small nerf coming to Karthus, who's been doing really well for a really long time. However, the nerf is going to do almost nothing in the long run of things. Karthus is getting a -10 movement speed nerf, and this doesn't do very much even though it seemed like it might. The real issue preventing this change from actually doing something to Karthus is the fact that he has very long range abilities. You can easily drag camps away from their spawn point and kill them before the meter goes away, and by that point you've already made up the difference in movement speed over time if you're just clearing properly. You can start your Krugs or even your Raptors before even leaving the area in which your red buff will start to de-aggro, and then from there you can move to the other one, and yeah, you'll lose a tiny bit of time there, and you'll lose a small amount of time crossing over the mid lane, but is it really going to be that much compared to the overall speed clear that Karthus has? No, it's not that big of a deal. And I mean, hey, if you want even more examples, from your wolves you can easily aggro your blue, and from blue you can definitely aggro Gromp. Beyond that, Karthus jungle is still incredibly powerful because of the way his Q works when it isolates from enemies. He just gets to absolutely demolish any camp that is even remotely single target, whether it be Krugs, red buff, blue buff, Gromp, or even the wolves. Raptors are the only one that would really give you trouble in terms of trying to clear them as efficiently and quickly as possible. But now we approach the last champion, and the champion who gets the least impactful changes coming up on the PvE is going to be ChoGath. ChoGath gets a very tiny change to his E, where the damage of the spikes goes up by 14 at the highest rank. While it is bigger than it seems, because it does hit 3 times, which is 42, there we go, that took longer than it should have, on an ability that you normally max last, and even if you maxed it first, would you really notice that 42 damage? Chances are, probably not. So hey, don't expect anything magical out of the magical void monster with this buff. And with that, that is everything upcoming on patch 10.9 that we have today. To get yourself ready and prepped for the new patch, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons of guides up there, all done by challenger level players on just about any topic that you could ever need. From very specific and in-depth champion guides and VOD reviews, all the way up to the very basic stuff that you need to start the game and start winning, we have something up there for you. And if you happen to have a suggestion on a topic or a champion that we need more work on, then please let us know in the comments. That way we can give you guys exactly what you need to improve and win in your games. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. Honestly, this patch is pretty light and not much has changed. And I mean, when I say not much, I mean most champions who got changed in this patch aren't going to move catastrophically upwards or downwards. Maybe one tier at most upwards or downwards, and some exceptions do exist, like maybe the Kane buffs take him way upwards or Bard nerfs take him way to the bottom. But as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.